Thanks for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. This is Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 18 to be perfectly precise. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, whose work you can find at joeblow.com. This is Infamous, and of course, right here at Just the Worst Podcast. And as we usually do every single week, not as we usually do, as we always do every single week, we always talk about what's the latest going on in the movie industry. The biggest things coming out of Hollywood, trying to put it into perspective for you, and letting you know why it matters, why it counts, why you should be paying attention to certain things, and also just kind of framing it, offering up some perspective so that you're not just kind of running out in crazy fanboy or fangirl style. You might be a little more educated, a little bit more informed, a little bit more in the know as to why certain things may be happening, or for what reason, or how they're happening, so to speak. And, you know, in the past few episodes, you know, there's been a lot of heavy focus on the bigger films, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe and Star Wars The Force Awakens, the blooming DC Cinematic Universe with Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice coming. And, you know, as usual, heading into this week, a lot of those things were still on the table. You know, the running box office tally that Star Wars continues to accumulate, as well as a brand new clip debuting for Batman v Superman that Zack Snyder brought to Jimmy Kimmel. And, you know, we had a pretty full show, as usual, kind of lined up for you for this particular episode. And then what happened was this morning, I woke up next to my wife to her exclaims, in checking her email, that Alan Rickman had died. The late Alan Rickman had died, at 69 years old, had passed away, surrounded by his family and his friends, after a bout with cancer. Not the first person as of late to succumb to a deadly, horrible disease. Lemmy from Motorhead recently lost his fight against cancer. Just earlier this week, David Bowie, the musical legend and icon, also had lost a bout to cancer. And so to hear the news that Alan Rickman had died this morning, I mean, this one kind of hit me pretty hard, because Alan Rickman is an actor that just a beloved actor, you know, a great talent to watch on screen, who I think really sort of is the epitome of the power of movies. And so as a result, what I wanted to do for this particular show is I took the entire agenda that we previously had, the whole rundown, and I just tossed it aside. And what I wanted to do for this particular episode 18, is just spend some time to reflect on the career of Alan Rickman, what he meant to, I think, movie lovers just by and large, over the course of his entire career, and kind of recall some of his better roles, the more known roles. I mean, it's hard to say his better roles, because I think every single role that Alan Rickman was a part of and took on in any movie that he did was good. I mean, it was better. There were no Alan Rickman roles that you could look at and say, Alan Rickman put in a stinker. You know, Alan Rickman didn't bring it. Alan Rickman just did that one for a paycheck. There were no Alan Rickman roles that felt like that. Every time you had Alan Rickman in a movie, you knew you were getting his best. You knew you were getting excellent work, and it helped elevate the film. And, you know, going back to sort of this idea of, you know, sort of epitomizing cinema, you know, what film does is film has this unbelievable ability to just capture your emotions and your imagination and and to thrill you and to entertain you and to pull at those heartstrings and to punch you in the gut, and to make you stand up and cheer and to make you tear up with all sorts of feelings that you didn't even know were in there until the film pulled it out of you. And I think Alan Rickman was an actor who really tapped into what the power of cinema can do, because there's not a film in Alan Rickman's filmography, not a movie on his resume that you can look at and say, Alan Rickman didn't do something for me in that movie. And that is a remarkable track record to have attached to you. And, you know, I've been doing this on social media all day because, you know, it's really hard to know how a death like this is going to affect you until it does. And some hit you harder than others. Some hit certain people harder than others. And the loss of Alan Rickman has really kind of just pounded me all day long. That, as I've been doing on social media, I've been using this as a way to celebrate Alan Rickman. I've been asking people, you know, tell me your favorite Alan Rickman movie, your favorite Alan Rickman role. Is there a line or a scene from Alan Rickman that to this day you just hold on to and you recall fondly and it brings a smile to your face? So what I wanted to do for this particular show, episode number 18, was use this as a celebration of Alan Rickman, an actor who really did his craft proud and did it remarkably well, to the point that, you know, his death hurts. It means something. It lets you know that a great actor is now gone. And so I wanted to use this time to talk a little bit about Alan Rickman. I never had the chance to talk to Alan Rickman, to interview Alan Rickman or to interact with Alan Rickman, but Alan Rickman was the kind of guy, the kind of talent, the kind of actor that is one of the reasons I got into doing what it is that I do, whether it's writing about film or talking about film or reviewing film or interviewing people involved in film. Is Alan Rickman is one of those just fascinating people that you would love to sit down and talk with forever, in order to sort of pick his brain, in order to sort of understand his process, his approach to characters, because he did it so well. Because every time he was on the screen, you saw something incredible, something special, something that did tap into your humanity. And you know, when I love interviewing people in the movie business, because I like talking to them about movies. You know, there are plenty of people who are in it for the wrong reasons. You know, they're star fuckers, in a sense. They just like to be surrounded by celebrity, and being in the presence of a famous person, or there are people who just want to chase scoops, and try to get the next thing from somebody while completely ignoring the very thing that they're here to talk about. And one of the things that I've always loved, as far as interviewing people, is being in a spot, having an opportunity to sit down in front of them and talk the very thing that they love, that they are passionate about, and sharing that passion with them. And they respond to it. They enjoy having that time. And I really wish that I would have had an opportunity to converse with Alan Rickman in that matter, because I just think he is one of the fascinating people who are involved in this, and he was so great at what he did. But he is the kind of person that you dream about sitting across from in that setting, because you just know the wealth of knowledge in his mind is so valuable. And even to just tap into that for a few minutes is a really special gift. Now, speaking of special gifts, I'd like to thank Alan Rickman on this very show, this very podcast, on behalf of myself, on behalf of the many people who are listening right now, for giving us the gift of watching him work over all of these years, because it has been an absolute pleasure sitting in a dark theater and watching him do what he does. And you can look at the career of Alan Rickman and how incredible it is from top to bottom. And, it's at this time that I wanted to kind of talk about some of those works that stand out, that really hit you. Now, this is a guy who never won an Oscar, never received an Academy Award nomination, did win a Golden Globe at one point in time back in '96 for a miniseries or television film. That was the category, Best Actor in Miniseries Television Film, for Rasputin, Dark Servant of Destiny. Had been nominated for a few different things along the way. BAFTAs, because he was British, Screen Actors Guild. But the big ones sort of eluded him, and you look at it and go, I don't understand how that could be, because he was so good at it. And sometimes, that's the trick, is having it not look like acting, having it just look like you're doing your job incredibly well, so that it's seamless, doesn't really stand out all that much, other than when it's over to be like, damn, that was really good. And oftentimes those talents go underappreciated. And, look, you look at the career of Alan Rickman, and I think the first film to pop off the list, to stand out, would be his first major motion picture, which was co-starring opposite Bruce Willis as the classic movie villain Hans Gruber in the original Die Hard. Die Hard is arguably the best, if not one of the best, action movies of all time. All time. You look at action movies over the course of history, all time, Die Hard's right up there. Once again, if not at the top of the heap, it's in the conversation. And while Bruce Willis's everyman sort of portrayal as John McClane, as that film's hero, works because the viewer can identify with him so well, one of the other tricks to why Die Hard works as phenomenally as it does is due to Alan Rickman in the villainous role. Because without a proper menacing foil for your hero, your hero's journey doesn't necessarily mean as much unless unless there is someone on that other side, an equal, someone who threatens their very existence with their evil ways. And he plays it so beautifully. It is smart. It is funny. It is cutthroat. It is everything that movie villains strive, aim to be, and very often are nowhere near pulling it off in the way that Alan Rickman did in Die Hard. His conversations over the, and they're all just over the walkie-talkie in many ways, trying to be calm, cool, and collected while this New York City cop is mucking up the works for them in Nakatomi Plaza, is great. Because he's not a mustache twirler. He's not trying his hardest to be over the top or to be so showy. He is very grounded, knows what he wants, and as a result, you have a fantastic villain. That Die Hard works for both of its halves, and Bruce Willis is very responsible for the success of Die Hard. Alan Rickman is just as equally responsible in making Die Hard work as well as it does. And Die Hard is easily my favorite action movie of all time. It's my favorite Christmas movie of all time. And this evening, I may be popping the original Die Hard in once again to try and pay some sort of tribute to Alan Rickman. And where do you go from there? Where do you go when your best work is your first work? When you peak right out of the gate? And you can look at something like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves as the Sheriff of Nottingham, where once again he fully embraced that villainous role. Look at something like Sense and Sensibility as Colonel Brandon. But I think, or even Dogma, Kevin Smith's Dogma as the Metatron. There's a ton of films out there. I think that there are a couple of other roles that really define, though, who Alan Rickman was as an actor and what he was capable of as an actor. And the other film I think that fully defines his career is as Professor Severus Snape in the Harry Potter series. Now, look, this is a really deep and rich character that you don't get a full understanding of until much later in the franchise. Early on, he just seems like this antagonistic foil to sort of oppose the hero of Harry Potter. But the deeper into J.K. Rowling's mythology and lore that you get, the better grasp you get on the emotional depth that exists within Snape. And it is a heartbreaking journey to go on in retrospect once you get all of the pieces of the puzzle put together. But Alan Rickman plays this character with such nuance that you know from the outset that there has to be something more to this character than just the mean professor. And it is such a key role in the wizarding world of Harry Potter of Mr. Potter that while your core trio of Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson and Rupert Grint as Harry Potter, Hermione, and Ron Weasley carry everything forth, there needs to be so much put into those outside pieces to make it all come together. The Harry Potter world cannot just exist upon Harry Potter and Voldemort. In order for it to be this living, breathing thing, you have to have performances top-notch all over the place. And Alan Rickman as Snape brings that to those films, each chapter, making that character so meaningful and matters so much that when you do get the true understanding of Snape's nature, tears come down your face. Because it is so sad, and yet so beautiful. And yet the character's arc is such a roller coaster of emotions. From disdain to anger to love, that only someone of Alan Rickman's character could make that happen in all the right ways for you and for the films. There's one other performance and one other film that I really want to talk about. That always stands out to me, that I love so much. And it's an ensemble piece. But he's so good in it. Because he's essentially playing up a perception of himself. And how he would look at a movie of this nature. And that would be his role as Alexander Dane / Dr. Lazarus in the Star Trek satire Galaxy Quest. Galaxy Quest is a great sci-fi movie, period. Galaxy Quest may be arguably the best Star Trek movie ever made. And it's not even a Star Trek movie. But his dynamic with Tim Allen, who for all intents and purposes plays William Shatner. Alan Rickman as this sort of above it all, just take pride in your work actor, who while he wants to do more serious fare has been just strangled by typecasting and the fandom of this science fiction television show. And then being thrust into it as becoming a real thing. By Grabthar's hammer, I love Alan Rickman in Galaxy Quest. I love that film, and I love Rickman in it. And once again, that seems to be a connective tissue between all of the films that he's a part of. Once again, you look at him in Kevin Smith's Dogma, and you say, he's so great in it. Or even in Love Actually, a film that I don't particularly care for. But his scene shopping for a gift that he's not supposed to be buying playing against Rowan Atkinson, who has the freedom to turn it up. Well, a great deal of the comedy is Rickman's straight man reacting to that absurdity. It's so good. It's so good. And I am going to miss it. I'm going to miss Alan Rickman in any film moving forward. Because I know that Alan Rickman elevates what he is a part of. He makes it better just being involved. He makes his other talent around him better by having to rise to his level. Look, there is no question to me that Alan Rickman is an all-timer. He is one that if you ever want to watch a movie, knowing that you're putting a movie in that involves Alan Rickman, you're getting your money's worth. That, to me, is the mark of one of those true once-in-a-lifetime actors that come along. I wish we had him longer. I wish we had more from him. But much like you, I'm going to appreciate what Alan Rickman has given us in the past. I'm going to watch Die Hard. I'm going to watch Galaxy Quest. I'm going to watch Harry Potter with a smile on my face moving forward. Remembering what Alan Rickman gave to us over the years. How great it was. How much it means to us. And for that, I am truly saddened that Alan Rickman is no longer with us. Having died at age 69. Having fought cancer. He will be missed. That's it for the show. Make sure you follow us on social media. At JTW Podcast on Twitter. Facebook.com/JustTheWorstPodcast. Myself at Infamous Kid on Twitter. Facebook.com/BullyTheKid. All the podcasts you can find. SoundCloud.com. Just do yourself a search for Just the Worst Podcast. And next week, we'll be back to talk about something else. This has been Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 18. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, whose work you can find at JoeBlow.com. This is Infamous, and right here at Just the Worst Podcast. Farewell, Alan Rickman, and thank you. Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 18, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast Media.